Hey YouTube, what's happening? I've received a surprising amount of interest in how I build my decks. As such, I figured it was time I made a video giving you some insight into my deck building thought process. Being a fan of brevity myself, I'm going to do my best to keep this brief by only discussing my current favorite decks in detail, and will then close the video by cycling through my other decks quickly so you can see how I set them up, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. First, I'm going to be talking about unit preferences from my perspective. There are plenty of people who play this game differently than I do and succeed in doing so. When I say something like, the 50mm autocannon is the only correct choice for the Booker, I'm not trying to put down your choice if you enjoy running the 105mm on your Booker. If it works for you, it works for you. Second, I am pretty bad at microing heavy armor. Don't take this to mean that heavy armor is bad. My buddy, Damn Username, is a menace with the US armored decks and absolutely murders people with his Abrams. I'm not so good in that department, and I build my decks accordingly. So without further delay, let's get into my favorite deck, Striker Airborne. Just starting from the top, I run airborne snipers with suppressed rifles. I don't really see a point to running the heavies when my snipers, if they're doing their job right, are always on hold fire and are never seen. Obviously, if you have a Global Hawk or a Sentinel and you don't run them, you are a great disservice to your team. Infantry is, I think, pretty self-explanatory. It got a good mix of ground pounders, anti-tank, and troopers with stingers. The only real reason I bring these troopers is so I can have access to these 4 striker transports. That is not to knock on the troopers. Having a 9-man squad of ground pounders that also have access to AT-4s and javelins is actually pretty interesting. I tend not to use them all that often. I tend to prefer the airborne here, or the more focused anti-tanks, TOW-2As, or weapon squads. On to the main reason why I like this deck. I love me some Thunderbolts. This is actually the M8 AGS. You just upgrade it to the 120 and it becomes a Thunderbolt. The M8's 120 is the best performing gun in the American arsenal. It is tied with the SEP V3 Abrams for having the highest penetration value on its lawn dart, and its heat works great versus IFVs as well. And you get the whole thing for 160 points. It's a fantastic little vehicle. It is very squishy. You cannot sustain with it very well. I recommend you keep it at long ranges. Run the APS system so that you can joust with missiles a little bit before you have to leave. And in front of those guys, I always keep the Bookers. These guys have a bit more armor, a bit more health. You also put the Iron Fist APS on it, and they will tank shots pretty well in front of your Thunderbolts, allowing them to pour out the damage. The Bookers are also fantastic in that they can engage helicopters quite easily, they kill IFVs very quickly, they kill infantry very quickly. If you run these two units together, they have some pretty good synergy, and if you lose those units, you don't lose all that much because they're quite cheap. Patriot Pack 3, MSE, I don't know what to say about it. It's a Patriot, it does its job. I will point out that if you are not running the 12 missile setup, you're doing it wrong. And to explain why, I'm going to switch down to 8 real quick. I want you to watch right here where it says multi-targets 3, letting you know that when you run the 8 missiles or the 4 missiles, it can target 2 or 3 people at the same time, respectively. But when you switch to 12, not only can you target 3 different people, you can fire 2 missiles per target. That's huge. We are coming up on a change. The patch just dropped today, as of the day of recording, and I think we're going to move the C-Rams up to the C-Ram instead, because America has long had a huge disadvantage when it comes to SHORAD, and I think this C-Ram is going to be amazing now, I hope. We'll have to test it. But for now, I'm going to implement it. I'm going to drop it down to 2. I don't think I have to change anything. I don't need this thing anymore at all, though. Frankly, I don't like the MML. It's interesting, but it's also pretty bad and very squishy. Interesting. I freed up some points here. I wonder if I could. So, with the addition of the C-Rams becoming interesting, I dropped down to 1 Striker SHORAD, removed the MML, and I'm going to add 3 Brutus with Guided. I'm going to have a good amount of artillery options now, which is actually intriguing for this deck. We'll have to see how that feels. That could be quite useful. The rest of this stuff is pretty straightforward. 1 Chinook, it's good for an opener if you want to go heavy infantry on the opening. Otherwise, it's good for getting large amounts of supply into a backline position if you need to resupply arty or helicopters. For my Apaches, I just run half Hydras, half Hellfires. These are my generalists. They'll do everything I need them to do, and if I lose them, they're not super scarily expensive. Now that I have more points, I can switch back to this. I generally run my Guardians with non-stop fire and forgets. It's very expensive, but it can sit in the back. We'll drop down to 3 there. It can sit in the back, and it can move up to block enemy armor pushes very effectively. Personally, I tend to run my HIMARS with high explosive. I've always felt that American cluster artillery is kind of anemic, and generally speaking, I'm not using artillery to kill heavy armor anyhow. I'm using it to kill supply depots, AA positions, and infantry positions and things like that. If there is a heavy tank spotted, it generally is being spotted by some kind of scouting unit, and that means I can laze it. And these high explosive warheads will work just fine on a laze tank. The jets, if you've got access to a harm bus in any deck, you need to be running at least 2 harm planes. In this deck, of course, I'm running the CJs, 2 harms, 2 AMRAAMs. Basically make it as cheap as possible while running your maximum harms. The F-16C is one of those planes that, yes, there are all kinds of ordnance options for it, but in my humble opinion, having 6 Mavericks on an F-16 is just too good. I run the ECM pod just for that little extra chance of getting through an AA net, try and get the Mavericks on point. The A-10 is there for the same reason and the same use. It's obviously much slower, but it also has a lot more fuel, and you don't have to worry about burning it in the afterburn. So it makes a great loiter platform in your backfield if you think they're gonna send a armored push soon. But don't bother trying to make the A-10 push into their lines. It's not gonna happen. Just respond to pushes with it. F-15E, I mean, if you've watched my content, you see what I do with the Snake Eyes with it. It's very expensive. It's not always cost effective, but it's funny. And that's what matters. And the F-15C is my fighter. The way I run the F-15C is 2 Sparrows, 2 AMRAAMs, and 2 Sidewinders, as you can see here. This keeps it very cheap, and you get 3 different types of missiles that fire off at 3 different ranges. Meaning if you're going in on a target fast, you will ripple fire 3 different missiles at that same target, which increases your chances of getting it killed. That's the deck. That's my favorite deck. I do most of my work in it. I'll show you my second favorite real quick. We won't dwell on it. That's Spec Striker. Spec Striker basically does the same thing as the previous deck does. You just get the Sentinel instead of the Global Hawk, which is a huge improvement. The Sentinel is goated. One of the best single units in the American decks. Everything else I run about the same. Rangers RRC are amazing. They can be great in close quarters as well, although I think standoff is really where they're at. I use the STTs just for their stingers, and that is because this particular deck doesn't have too many infantry options for dedicated anti-tank. I switched the Ranger Stingers over to Javelins, again, because I need some anti-tank, and then you've got Troopers for dedicated anti-tank. The Maws aren't great, but they're only great in close quarter and versus lighter tanks. If you're facing an MBT in the front with a Ranger Maw, it's not going to do a whole lot to it, at least not quickly. But they are great at close quarter fights with IFVs. Delta Force are the single best infantry versus infantry type unit in the game, and they're great in either configuration. Standoffs are just amazing. If you get the enemy at 600 meters, there's so much firepower landing on them. It's incredible. Close quarters, if you put Delta Force into a building with any units in the game, it will murder them. Frankly, it could probably murder any 2 units in the game. I do like them in standoff. I've been recently experimenting with them in close quarters, but it's mostly a preference. The reason I don't use this specialization as much as the previous one is because all you get are the Bookers, and I really like having those 120 AGSs in the back. Patriot, we've talked about that. Gerard, we've talked about. Got the Centurion with the C-Rams. Comanches are amazing. I was running the Comanches with 4 Stingers simply because I didn't have access to a lot of SHORAD. But now that I have Centurion C-Rams and the Striker SHORAD, I would be tempted to switch this out. I'm going to have to think on that for a bit longer, and I might do that. Killer Eggs, if you're running the special Spec Ops deck in any configuration, you have access to Killer Eggs. It is highly recommended you run Killer Eggs with just the straight miniguns. They can do disgusting things to light units, and they're incredibly cheap. So if you can run them out there and get like 2 kills, you already earned your money back. They can be devastating versus enemies, opening rushes and things. I believe we've been over the jets. In this instance, though, for the F-16CJ, I'm doing a little bit of an odd thing. I'm running 4 harms, and then I'm running a little more expensive 4 AMRAAMs. I'll use this thing as the opening fighter, as well as harms for the enemy anti-air. That way I can use my 2 Raptors as JDAM bomb trucks, because the F-22 Raptor, while being great as a fighter, is surprisingly good at piercing AA nets and putting bombs on foreheads, and it always comes with 2 AMRAAMs and 2 Sidewinders. So while you're making those runs, you can shoot off at enemy drones, shoot off at enemy jets, and shoot off at enemy helicopters if you see them. It can be very effective. And the last thing is the Nighthawk. I wish I had just a few more points. I'd love 2 of these, but it was a choice between the 2. I'm going for the Raptors now. The Nighthawk with the 2 JASMs is incredibly cost-effective. It's the one option the Americans have to try and be a Russian cruise missile spamming kind of piece of shit. Although with the latest patch, some of that may be mitigated now, so we'll see how all this kind of shakes out. And that's it. Those are like my 2 go-to decks. I'm just going to cycle through the others just to kind of show you what they look like. You can draw your own conclusions.
As always, have a nice day.